Let's start off with the new UFC 200 main event. We're a little late to this because we haven't been able to talk about it. We've been writing about it. But now let's talk UFC 200 main event. Daniel Cormier, Jon Jones. It's set in stone, hopefully. What do you think about this, Sean?
I mean, you know what? I just don't think it has the same. And I didn't like the fact that Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz was the main event because I thought a title match should, headline your UFC 200. But I don't know, man. This just doesn't give me the pizzazz that I'd want the UFC 200 to have.
Now, let me ask you this question because I wrote this in an article that you can find on our site about Conor McGregor's shadow looming over UFC 200, as it will up until that night and possibly after. Would you have felt better if this was announced as the main event before Conor McGregor was announced as the main? If Conor McGregor was never supposed to be on this card in the first place, would you feel better about this main event?
Probably, yeah. Probably. I mean, probably, yeah. But the fact that you had, but a lot of things are happening around the Conor McGregor camp that's kind of, I don't want to say, hurting him or whatever, but, everybody's not as, I don't think the fans are kind of, I'm not saying they're jumping off board, but he's losing a little bit of that pizzazz
aura
that he had, the aura around him, just I think everybody's finding out, or not finding out, or just realizing, or maybe it's part of the master plan of Conor McGregor, but like he's not that good guy anymore, really.
No, he's gone, like, as all good guys go when it comes to combat sports and wrestling. They turn into bad guys. Yeah. This is his heel run, if you want to call it, for Conor McGregor. And he tried to force himself back on the card after being taken off. He tweeted out that thank you to Dana.
After he tried to force to make a lot of money, too. No, I mean, that was the thing.
Yeah, I mean, this was a whole weird story. Then he started taking shots at people on Twitter about pay-per-view buys and how Cormier and Jones are never going to measure up. He's right, but it's kind of a bad look. Then you get all the BS yesterday. I'm not with Mayweather and McGregor, and I'm not even going to go into that because it's such a dumb story, and so many major media outlets actually talked about it, which made my brain numb at a certain point. Mostly because that story said Conor would only take $10 million, which would be completely absurd at this point. He would want all of the money. But this is the kind of thing now. McGregor's off the card. He's not coming back to the card. So we have to take UFC 200 and evaluate it as such. To me, this is the best fight, pure fight matchup-wise, that the UFC could have to headline a pay-per-view. So I love the main event. It's taken away a little bit because of the fact that we had McGregor Diaz and now we don't. Even though we didn't like McGregor Diaz in the first place, now that it's gone. I don't
know if it's only that either, though, Brian, because Jon Jones didn't look like. I mean, I don't know. To me, it just. I still don't know what you're going to get here in this fight, and I just don't. I mean, again, this is me, my own personal opinion, is just that it just doesn't tickle my fancy, I guess, is what I'm saying. Because, I mean, it's like I watched that fight with Jones and nothing there stood out to me that, hey, all right, I'm going to buy the next pay-per-view he's on, even if it's for a title. I just didn't.
Well, that's understandable. But you have to take into account, number one, OSP broke his arm midway through the fight. So I think he was basically trying to survive. Jones obviously had cage rust. We had talked about it previously going into the fight. Like, how is he going to look? And he looked like he was still getting his bearings. But if you watch him back, the elbow, the strikes, everything that he was doing, it was Jon Jones. And it just wasn't pinpoint. It wasn't accurate. It wasn't turned up to 11. And I think it's a great thing for him to get that out of the way. And Cormier, who was on commentary for that fight, is really regretting missing out on that fight because he's going to get a much better, much more in tune Jon Jones for this.
Man, they should make you be the hype guy for this fight because I don't know if they're going to be able to sell me on this, and you're trying to. But
I'm just telling you, it's the visceral hatred between these two is legit, number one. And number two, Cormier and Jones, from a stylistic skill set standpoint, to me, is the best fight that they can put together right now. Because, I mean, McGregor's obviously the biggest draw.
But I mean, you've said a lot of times about the GSP and everything. You wouldn't have rather seen like maybe a novelty fight like that added to it instead of this?
If I had the choice between Cormier Jones or GSP Lawler, that would be really tough for me, because I'm Lawler for all the love that we give him as analysts, because the guy goes through freaking wars every time he fights, and every fight is fight of the night material and entertaining.
Yep.
He's not as big of a draw. And George St-Pierre coming back, we don't know how relevant GSP is to the outside viewer. To people who love mixed martial arts and people who love the UFC, GSP comes back, the $60 goes on the table immediately, because it's like, oh my God, George St-Pierre is back. To me, I think Jones and Cormier, as much as they did all the casual promotion, the Good Morning America stuff, that gif of everyone shadowboxing in the beginning of the TV show, as much as they want to appeal to middle America and they want these big outlets, when it comes down to it, just like when the WWE advertises WrestleMania and does all this stuff, the people who are going to buy this fight are your hardcore fans, and you might pull in casuals with your big names and all that. But you make your money off of the people who fork down their money for all of the fights, or for most of the fights, or who know and are knowledgeable about all this stuff, or that go to bars and watch the fights, or do all this stuff. So they have to find a perfect balance, and I think Cormier and Jones does that, because you can sell the hate, you can sell to the casual audience all of that stuff that you saw on Good Morning America, and then when they're going on their media tours and all that stuff. But then to fans, when you watch from a technical standpoint, this is going to be an amazing fight. So I like the setup. Not having McGregor after having him is going to impact them, because they shot themselves in the foot.
Well, I mean, did they shoot themselves in the foot, or were they? I mean, if you're them, are you going to go and hone up to everything that McGregor wanted?
Well, this should have all been done and set up before. There should have been no wiggle room. Because apparently there was, and they were still discussing this 3 weeks up to the fight.
Not only that, but they created the beast. I mean, we've talked about it before. You created your beast here when you started giving him whatever he wanted.
Yeah, and this is the UFC is going to get to a point where it has to deal with the fighters being larger than life, and their policy is still no fighter is bigger than the UFC. But eventually we're going to get to a point. This isn't it yet, but it's close, where they're going to have to reevaluate and see what to do, because the UFC does not want to lose control of any of these fighters. They don't want to lose the independent contractorship. They don't want an Ali Act. They don't want all of this stuff, because they want control over everything. It's just so much easier, and it's also a lot cheaper. So this McGregor story will continue to mold, develop, and do all these things. But for now, they've obviously locked in. This is going to be UFC 200. It's the best top-to-bottom card, at least from a fight standpoint, that I've ever seen. And I think you might agree with me on this one, right? Because this card is insane.
But again, I feel like they are stretching themselves, I won't say so thin, because they have a lot of great talent on the fight. But as far as, I guess, name fighters, they're starting to stretch themselves a little bit thin with injuries and everything, and I don't know if they might have bitten off a little more than they can chew with some of these cards, because some of these cards coming up, and we'll get into some of them later, is just there's not a lot on them. I mean, there's a lot of good talent and things like that, but nothing that makes me say, oh, I got to watch that.